Hello, YouTube. Today I am really excited about this video. I'm going to be taking on one of the most revered and august institutions in our society today. That is, I am taking on the institution of democracy itself. Okay, so this is going to be a good one. You're going to want to watch this. I think it's going to be an excellent video. I'm really excited for it. Let's get right into it. Democracy, arguments against democracy. So, as I said, democracy is one of the most revered institutions in our society today. Everybody's in favor of democracy. Every country around the world, even the ones that are blatantly not democratic, like Syria or Russia or China, they all claim to be democracies. Everybody says, we get support from the ballot box. Um, and in a sense, maybe some of them do, but but I question, how relevant is it that every 4 years you get a bunch of politicians that all have pretty much the same platform, and you choose one of them based on the rhetoric. How much input really is that into the political process for the average individual? So another argument against democracy is that it's mob rule, which is really what it comes down to. Whoever gets the most votes, whoever has the most people backing them, they get to call the shots for the next 4 years. So that's mob rule. Basically, we have the most people, ergo we're in charge. Okay, but there's some problems with this. The majority is not always right. Just because a lot of people believe something doesn't make it so. Mobs are stupid. There's nothing stupider than a mob. In any group, it gets dumbed down to the average collective intelligence or to the lowest common denominator. Mobs are angry, violent, unruly. The mobs are dumb. Okay. Another problem with mob rule is that, or with democracy, is that people vote to enrich themselves. They don't vote for what's fair or just. It's just they vote in their own self interest, and maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but society shouldn't be about one group looting another. There's more important principles. The state society shouldn't be a get rich scheme. And I have a question for Democrats, for individuals who advocate for democracy. Is if you're such a fan of democracy, then why not have direct democracy? Why do we have representative democracy? Why not just let people vote directly? Okay. So another argument against democracy is that it provides the appearance of legitimacy to the state. So at least when you have despotism, when you have an absolute king or a dictator or whatever, the guy's bad. You know that they're just out to collect their taxes, to rob the public. They're an illegitimate ruler. Everybody knows that, even if they're sort of tacitly accepting the reign of the king or whoever's in charge. But with democracy, the people are in charge, and so now this gives broad license for the state to do anything it wants because it has the support of the people, the democratic institutions. And so when you consider the actual nature of the state, okay, because the state is fundamentally a criminal organization. And I say that because the state obtains revenue through taxation. They use coercion as a means of obtaining revenue, and that's what a criminal organization does. A non-criminal organization provides a valuable good or service, In the market economy, they sell it to people. They offer to trade with people. That's what non-criminals do. But criminals, they say, give us your money or we're going to hurt you, right? If you're robbing a 7-Eleven, you say, you have a gun, you say, give me all the money in the till or I'll shoot this gun, I'll kill you, right? That's criminal action, criminal behavior. And yet what the state does is they say, give us your a third of your income or we're going to lock you in a cage. We're gonna jail you. Uh, so that's blatantly criminal action. And this has always been the historical nature of the state. Ever since it was founded, you can read Franz Oppenheimer's work, the German sociologist, and he identifies the origin of the state as being one tribe of herdsmen conquering another group, and then establishing the state as a means of exacting tribute from the vanquished people. So that has always been the nature of the state as a tool of subjugation and exploitation, a means by which one group can live parasitically off another. And democracy sort of obscures this very obvious fact, provides a justification or rationalization for the state without changing the state's fundamental nature. The state is inherently unjust. One of the activities that the state engages in is wealth redistribution. And this is based upon the idea of egalitarianism, the idea that people should be equal or should be made to be equal by the state. A very popular belief in our society, but one which I reject. I see no inherent benefit to egalitarianism, to equality. In fact, what I support is justice. What I support is wealth is created and it is unjust for the state to redistribute that wealth from those who created it to those who played no part in its creation. The wealth deserves to be in the hands of the people who created it, the workers, as well as the entrepreneurs, businessmen, investors. It's a whole team. They all sort of come together to produce wealth in what we know as the market economy or the productive process, and everybody gets their sort of shares based on what they put in, and they should be able to keep that wealth until they spend it. If the state comes in and says, no, we have to take a portion of this wealth and redistribute it to other groups, that seems inherently unjust to me. Another problem with democracy is this whole idea that we are the state, okay, or that the state is society, and you hear this very very often because of democracy and the democratic process. So the problem is, if we are the state, then the state can do really whatever it wants. If the state robs me, I'm not really being robbed. I'm robbing myself, or it's, we're just putting our money here when it was there. So it obscures the reality of aggression. If the state kills me, well, that's just euthanasia. That's too bad. So I reject this, and I reject the idea that the state and society are the same thing. The state is an organization within society. It is not. They are not equal. They are different things. The society is all the people in a given area, whereas the state is a separate organization within that society that sort of controls and extorts and robs everybody. Okay, moving on. Another argument against democracy is that it does not work very well. So if you compare the record of, say, 20th century democracies, because within the 20th century, the history of the 20th century, democracy was really on the rise. So 19th century, there was still democracy, but really what you had was more limited government, because the individuals in the 19th century, classical liberals, which was a broad movement at the time, essentially a broad libertarian movement, they recognized they had experience with the absolute monarchies of Europe. They were very steeped in that history, and they realized that the power of the state was an awesome, terrible thing, a dangerous thing. That the power could so easily be abused, and so it needed to be controlled, restrained, only allowed to do a few important things. Dispute resolution, the rule of law, the protection of individual rights and liberties. Uh, because when you open the Pandora's box and allow the state to do anything, that then you get uh, forms of government such as fascism or communism, where the state has total control over society. And as we saw in the 20th century, this was a very dangerous situation for the people in that particular society. Okay, omnipotent government does not work out well for the people or for anybody except the political elite. So, so the historical record of democracy, or the economic record of democracy, or of societies that we now call sort of modern liberal democratic governments, like England or the USA or Canada or France or Germany, these countries that hit industrial capitalism before the rest of the world, and are now sort of modern liberal democracies. They're not doing very well. They're doing well in absolute terms relative to the rest of the world, but in terms of like economic growth rates, they're growing very slowly. They're still growing, but like 2%, 2.5% economic growth is considered a banner year for a modern liberal Western democracy. Whereas prior to that, under laissez-faire, under limited government, you had much faster and much more sustained economic growth. And the reason for that is simple. When you have so much government spending and so many taxes and so much wealth redistribution, there's less money sort of being pumped into the economy and reinvested into the economy, and more money being spent by the political class on luxurious lifestyles, on trips, on nice houses and the like. So uh, you know, there's a lot of hay made out of checks and balances in the democratic system. Like under the American system, you've got three different branches of government: the judicial branch, legislative branch, and the executive branch. They're all sort of supposed to keep an eye on each other, but the reality is that hasn't worked whatsoever. We've seen the rise of the imperial executive. The president has assumed broad powers that were not at all envisioned within the Constitution of the United States when that country was founded. The whole point of separating the executive and the legislative branch was to constrain the power of the executive, um, which is why Congress alone was granted the authority to wage war. But the president just sort of gets into wars and doesn't call them wars. And okay, finally, let me make one more argument against democracy. Democracy is a soft form of communism. Okay, I said it. Democracy is a soft form of communism. Look, under democracy, everybody's equal. Everybody has a say, one man, one vote. Doesn't matter who you are. Okay. Under democracy, there really is no private property. How can you say that you own your land when you have to pay property tax every year? The government takes it away. You don't own that land. The government owns that land. You pay them rent. They call it property tax. It's the same thing as if they owned it and rented it to you. Your title is meaningless if you have to pay the state every year so that they don't take the land away from you. So there's really no private property. You have no private income. When you earn $100,000 in a year, the government's going to take 30%, let's say, whatever it is. I mean, depending on your effective tax rate. So you don't own that income. The state owns that income and allows you to receive 70% of it. They could just take the whole thing, and a lot of people want that. They want 98% marginal tax rates for the rich because, well, they're insane. But just like communism, just like Plato's communist ideal, democracy is against the family. Look at public schools. Look at the hostility towards homeschooling. So in Plato's communist utopia, all the children were sort of raised together, and that's the idea behind democracy, is that all the children, get schooled together, get indoctrinated with belief in the power and benefit of the state. So the core institutions of modern liberal democracies are socialist institutions, socialist education. Public education is socialist education. That is state-owned, state-run, virtual monopoly. About 90% of schooling in the USA and Canada is done by the state. That is socialist. When the state owns the means of production, in this case the schools, that's socialism. Wealth redistribution, that's a core tenet of both communism and democracy. Human rights, okay? So human rights, as opposed to, say, individual rights like the right to free speech, the right to own property, human rights like the right to health care, the right to a job, the right to food, these all entail that you have a right to other people's property or their efforts. How can I have a right to health care if I don't have the right to the efforts? Like, public health care is paid for taxes. The efforts of people's labor is essentially, that's what you're taking with taxes. You're taking a portion of their income, the efforts of their labor. So I'm claiming a right to the labor of other people. I'm saying that's a right. I actually own, that tiny little fraction of their labor that goes to fund public health care for me personally. And so it's the same idea in democracy and communism, that I own other people's stuff. Basically, that's what it boils down to. All right, so those are my arguments against democracy. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, throw me a subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. Yeah, that's it.